What is going on, guys? I'm Joe Farewell and welcome back to Recoil TV's Training Tune-Ups. Excited to bring you on today. We're going to be talking about the 3 keys that you need to know for recoil management with a pistol. Now, if you've been on the internet for any length of time, I'm sure you've seen guys and girls shooting pistols that just seem super flat, where they have no recoil at all. You see comments in there like, what ammo are you running? What compensator do you have on there? But really it comes down to 3 key aspects of how we manipulate our bodies in order to control that recoil. The first thing we want to look at is stance. Now, stance is commonly referred to as your foot position. However, my belief is that your foot position really doesn't matter all that much, because in a real world, a dynamic world, whether that's competition shooting or self-defense or whatever application you're using it for, your foot position is constantly changing. So we're never in the same exact stance, we're constantly moving around. What's more important than an actual foot position is our center of gravity. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our center of gravity is forward. We have a nice little bend to our knees, so we're able to keep that center of gravity forward while we manipulate the gun, while we're shooting, and while we're moving. Any position that we come into, we want to be able to establish that forward center of gravity, just like you would if you were in a fight, if you were in a boxing match or something like that. As soon as you have that center of gravity go behind you, that's where we start to get off balance, and you're gonna have to work a lot harder in order to keep that gun on the target. Let's see what we're talking about here. So an ideal position for me would be to have my left foot slightly forward, my rear foot slightly back. If we drew a line on the ground, my left heel would be on the line and my right toe would be on the line. That essentially gives me a slight offset with my balance. And then by adding my forward center of gravity like this, that's going to give me a really good stance in order to control all of the recoil I have to deal with. With that being said though, if I'm shooting a target on the left side here, the problem is the moment that I take those 2 shots and I transition to a target on the right side, now my foot position has shifted. My right foot is now leading, but my left foot is on the rear. That, to a lot of people, is going to be completely wrong. However, it doesn't really matter. As long as your center of gravity is forward, we can still maintain really good recoil control no matter which direction we're shooting, no matter where your feet are. The second aspect of recoil control that you really want to pay attention to is your grip. And we want to make sure that we're getting a really good high grip on the gun. We don't want to have any gap here. If we have a gap between the top of the grip or the beaver tail and your hand, that's going to give the gun leverage, which is going to allow that muzzle to flip up higher. We want to get that grip all the way up in there. Now, the other way that I build my grip is I focus on all of my pressure on my middle finger and my ring finger, pulling that grip into my hand straight back. That allows me to have this thumb up, kind of relax the rest of my hand, and it gives my left hand a chance to fill in that gap. It's really important that all of the room on this side of the gun gets filled in and we have as much contact as possible with our left palm. I want to make sure my hand gets as high up on the gun as possible. And it's okay to have your thumb touching the slide. It's not a big deal. It's not going to cause any issues. It's not going to hurt you. The only issue that you might run into is if you put too much pressure on the slide itself, you can cause a malfunction. Otherwise, you can run that thumb. And in this situation, I'm running a SIG P320. I like to run my thumb right here on the takedown lever. And that just gives me a good contact point to reference. From there, we want to make sure that we're getting a good firm grip, but we're not sitting here like shaking. Firm is important. We don't want to be loose, but we do not want to have it over gripped where we're not able to manipulate the trigger effectively and we're seeing our sight shake because of the effort that we're putting into it. Grip it as hard as you can without getting into that overexertion phase. Now, the third key, and probably one of the most overlooked but important ones, is how much wrist tension we use. You can have a really bad stance, you can have a pretty bad grip, and as long as you have good wrist tension, you can still control the recoil. I'm gonna show you a drill that's gonna help you focus on that and lock that wrist into place where we need it. The first thing we wanna do is keep our shoulders relaxed, bring that gun up, and as you can see here, I have a bend in my elbows, which allows that gun to, or my elbows to absorb the gun's recoil. The other aspect of this is if I have a loose wrist, the elbows aren't gonna actually do the work and the wrist is still gonna flip, the gun's gonna cycle back, we're gonna see a lot of elevation in our muzzle, and that's going to cause problems with the recoil management. So instead of that, we want to lock our wrist into place, let the elbows absorb the recoil, as you can see here, and we're going to let that gun simply cycle, come back, and then come straight back down on the target. Let's go ahead and put some rounds in range to see what it looks like. All right, so we're hot, ready to rock. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I get my knees bent. I've got that forward center of gravity. We're focusing on the center of our chest being in front of our pelvis. We're leaning into it. I'm going to establish a good grip, make sure my hand is all the way up on the top of the back strap here. My right hand is pulling that gun straight into my palm. My left hand, I'm indexing off of the bottom of my index finger and building up this good grip here. From here, I'm keeping my shoulders relaxed. I'm going to present up on the target. I'm going to lock this right wrist into place and make sure that it's not breaking every time I pull the trigger. And we're going to take a couple of shots here. So as you can see there's not a whole lot of recoil that you can see in the gun. The muzzle's not lifting very high. The sights are coming straight back on the target. That group's about that big around on a 12-yard target. And I want to show you though what happens if we screw up. So if I'm standing perfectly upright, my knees are locked, I'm going to go ahead and lock my elbows out, okay? And I'm going to let my wrist be loose. So as you can see, there's a lot of recoil there. The muzzle's flipping all over the place. So it really comes down to those 3 key points. Number 1, make sure that your stance is correct. Not necessarily your footwork, but especially your center of gravity. Number 2, make sure that your grip is on point. And number 3, we want to make sure that strong side wrist is locked in and that muzzle isn't flipping all over the place. Now, whenever I'm trying to isolate a specific skill set, in this case, we're going to be focusing on making sure that our wrist tension is correct. I always want to take out all of the other dynamics that we have to fight. So in this situation, one of the best drills that you can do to make sure that your recoil control is on point is to simply take away your other hand. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on locking that right wrist into place and getting that gun back on the target, just shooting with our strong hand only. As you can see, that gun's going to come up slightly, but it's going to snap right back down on the target. And I'm making sure that I have a good tension in that wrist so it's not breaking. The opposite of that would be if I had a loose wrist, it would look something like this. Okay? Where in that situation, you can see the gun is lifting a whole lot, it's bouncing all over the place, and it's not coming back to the same exact spot. We want to make sure that we're locking it into place and we're controlling that recoil. I hope that helped you guys. Be sure to get the range. If you have any questions or comments, drop a comment down below. If you have any questions for me, check out fairwellfirearms.com or hit me up on social media. Until next time, enjoy your Recoil TV, and I'll see you on the range.